Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our stakeholder meeting for fire stations. This is our third stakeholder meeting. For those of you that are new with us tonight, I'm Carl Dondorfer, one of the trustees, along with Amy Lucci and Morgan McIntosh, the other trustees. We appreciate you coming here this evening. This has been a long endeavor. We've come a long way with this project. I've been involved with it for about a year. Since then, we've seen a new board of trustees, several conceptual designs, a lot of community input. We designed these stakeholder meetings to solicit input so we could move this project forward. A lot of that input involved recommendations on the fire station designs that are at the rear of the center here tonight for you to view, as well as some recommendations on financing and things of that nature that we're going to get into later in the presentation here as far as creative financing. With that, we've been very busy. We requested some numbers from the auditor that we're going to discuss here this evening with you that involve financing the projects. And it's our desire tonight to engage those that are here with us personally and online in an effort to move this project forward as far as how we're going to fund the project. We're sort of at a fork in the roadway. This project needs to be done sooner than later. We need to ensure the safety and health and wellness of our safety services, our firefighters, and ensure the safety and wellness of our community. We really appreciate everyone being here, and we will hold everybody's comments as far as speaking to about 3 minutes. The agenda, if everybody didn't grab one, is at the corner, where the trustees are going to have some opening comments, and then we are going to get into the finance options that we are looking at. We have not made any decisions at this point. We're looking for more community engagement tonight, but it does involve the numbers that we recently set out and requested from the auditor. After that, we will engage the public and public comment virtually and here with us this evening, and then we'll wrap up with some comments at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Amy Lucci for some opening comments.
Thanks, Carl. I think I have read more about fire stations and learned more about fire stations in the last 7 months of my entire life. All very fun, though. I enjoy it very much. I know most of us have been here for the last 3 stakeholder meetings. Is there a show of hands? Have most people been to all 3 of them? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is this anybody's first time here? Thank you very much. So for most of us, it's not our first rodeo. Basically, what I just wanted to say is this meeting is for you. We understand that in order to understand you, we need to listen. And that's why we are here. We care about you. We care about what you're going through. We want to meet you where you're at. We want to support you the best way we can. But we're also asking for support ourselves. Our firefighters cannot just simply make do with the facilities that they've made do with for so long. It's really time to step up. When we really need them, they show up for us. We sort of take advantage. I take advantage of the fact that if something's really wrong and I need them, they're going to be there. So they always have our backs. We need to have their backs. So I'm just asking for some consideration that when you dialogue with us tonight, just kind of keep those thoughts in the back of your mind. But again, I appreciate your time, and I will hand this over to Mr. McIntosh. Thank you.
Sorry, my pet peeve is people that speak, or is the muffled voice that comes from behind a mask. So I just want to welcome everybody here. It's been a nice dialogue we've had these last, I think about 6 weeks. We've been doing this since the middle of June. I think it's been constructive. It's been helpful for us to hear perspective and had a chance to dialogue. We've heard a lot of different opinions regarding this project and how people feel about it. So I guess after the last stakeholder meeting, and we've had 2 trustee meetings since where we have put numbers to the auditor's office, and that was for the purpose of getting information to analyze finance options, and that's the next thing that we've had some conversation about design, and the trustees have not made a decision regarding finance. We have cultivated options, and I believe our administrator is going to, and our fiscal officer are going to take us through some of their thoughts and what we think we can do with these options, and we want to dialogue about that this evening. So again, welcome, and thank you for your continued participation.
Thanks, Morgan. Thanks, Amy. And with that, I would like to introduce Amy Dawson, our fiscal officer, who is going to go through a nice plan she put together as far as our financing options for everybody to look at and evaluate. And Andy Rose will help her out with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carl. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Amy Dawson. I'm your fiscal officer. Been with the Township for almost 16 years. 4 as the assistant fiscal officer, and I've been elected for almost 11 years. So, one of the things that I wanted to do for you is make this simple. There's a lot of different options, there's a lot of different ways we can go, but let's talk about what we need to do. We have to build 2 fire stations. They're in bad shape. So what is 2 fire stations going to cost? $12 million. That is the information that we're getting back from our experts. It's probably not going to cost less than $12 million. So that's a good planning figure to have right now. Now, does that mean maybe we can do one for 3.5 and, one for 8 or, 7.5 perhaps? I don't know at this point. I cannot even speculate on what the figures are going to be other than using the planning figure of 12 million. If it comes in cheaper, great. That's wonderful. Okay. All right. Hannah, can you go ahead? Okay. So the first breakdown I'm going to say on option 1 is let's make it easy. You got 12 million, 6 million, 3 million, 3 million. 12, 6, 3, 3. Estimated cost of both fire stations is $12 million. One of the proposals before the trustees is that a $6 million bond levy. Hopefully, by the time we start the fire stations, we'll have cash on hand of $3 million. Right now, I have $2.5 million set aside specifically for this fire stations projects. We'll make up the rest with uncollected cash, grants, and short-term debt. What do I mean by that? Uncollected cash. Hotel tax that's owed to us, sewer money that is being reimbursements. For instance, we put sewers in 2004. Every time somebody hooks up to those sewers, we get money back. I know that we're going to get money back next year. I'm just not sure how much. So over the next couple of years, as people start hooking up into sewers, we're going to get money back. That goes into our capital projects fund. The primary sources of cash that I have right now are the JED fund and the capital projects fund. Okay? So let's break that down even more. $6 million bond levy, okay? A $6 million voter-backed bond levy is 0.45 mils for 27 years, okay? We can always pay that off early. We can always pay that off early. All right, what does that mean? It's $15.75 per $100,000 value of your house per year. It's found in the Lake County Auditor's website, all right? And what does that mean? That means it's $47.25 per year on a $300,000 house, or less than $4 a month. Okay? $4 a month. $3 million cash on hand. The estimated cash on hand at the start of the project in 2021, as I just stated. $3 million uncollected cash, grants, short-term debt. It's uncollected cash, again, the hotel tax, the sewer reimbursements, grants. We have NOPEC grants that are waiting for electrical upgrades, thermal windows, things like that. We'll have close to $100,000 in grants from NOPEC that we have to start using. Fire station equipment. I know we have a grant writer, an expert grant writer in the fire department who is always constantly asking for grants on fire equipment and updates like that. Unfortunately, there are no grants specific to fire station financing. And then short-term debt, notes, bonds, and loans. Okay. My second option is if the trustees decide they want to go for the $8 million bond levy. So we've got 12 million, 8 million, and then I'm going to say 2 and 2, just because it makes it easier. 12, 8, 2, 2. Estimated cost of the fire stations is 12 million. The bond levy would be 8 million. Cash on hand, 2 million. Then 2 million uncollected cash, grants, short-term debt. It's the same thing. Or you could do 12, 8, 3, and 1. Okay? Chances are, if we have an $8 million bond and we stick to schedule and we build like we're supposed to, I'm not going to need to take out short-term debt at the end of this. I would be very comfortable with not doing that. Okay? And again, same thing. We've got estimated cash on hand at the start of the project between 3 and 2 million, between 1 and 2 million uncollected cash, grants, short-term debt. Okay. Keep going, Hannah. All right. I just kind of rolled that all in. All right. So, for those of you that don't know me, before I started, we didn't have any debt. We had no debt ever. In 2009, we took out our first debt, and that was an OPWC grant and loan combination. The loan allowed us to get the points we needed for the grants, and that was for Viewmont Road construction. We were granted a $150,000 loan at 0% interest for 20 years. We only borrowed $97,400 and we paid it off in 2012. Okay, well, I didn't pay any interest on that, but we only borrowed what we needed. And I'm a huge advocate of that. We borrow what we need and then we pay it off early, okay? Santander Bank in 2015, we did an equipment lease for 5 plow trucks, okay? It was basically buy 4, get 1 free. All right, we did $650,700. It was 2.6% interest for a 6-year lease. We paid it off the beginning of 2018. We saved $35,000 off that particular thing. We also saved a great deal of money by doing that lease. The cost of the trucks would have been way more than $650,000. Okay. Then we've got a state infrastructure bank loan, 2014, the Capitol Parkway extension between Cryle Road and Auburn. We were approved for $10 million, but we only accepted 5.4, okay? As we were going along, we were paying for things. So 3% interest rate for a 20-year loan. We paid $2.7 million, not all in 2009, but we paid off the majority of that in 2019. Zero balance as of 2020, okay? It's never a good idea to pay interest if you have to. If you have the cash on hand, it's always a better thing to pay it off early. And that has been my track record, okay? So why now, okay? Because first of all, there's no charge from the Board of Election during a federal election, okay? So we're gonna save approximately $21,000 in Board of Election costs that are passed directly onto us every time we put a bond levy or any kind of levy on the ballot, okay? We believe there's gonna be high voter turnout, and we'd like to take advantage of historically low interest rates. Also, we'd like to avoid rising construction costs. And Andy's going to talk a little bit about the construction costs. He's been doing a little research on that as to what's gone on in the past year, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dawson. I did a little homework. There's been some discussion about construction costs, building materials, and things like that. I actually reached out to Menor Lumber, Bob Sanderson. Some of you know him, former president of Menor Lumber, and he still dabbles in the lumber business. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he was a great help. So if he's listening in the virtual world, thank you, Bob. It's 60% increase in lumber from July 19 to July 2020. That's an artificial number, but that's what the facts are. The increase is likely very temporary. It's a significant increase due to the production rollbacks and the production cutbacks at the lumber mills. Without COVID, the increase will likely fall in line with the other construction materials, which is about 4 to 5% a year. The 60% increase isn't there to scare you. That's what the actual costs were. That's what the percentage was that he gave me. So I wanted to present what he gave me, but in doing some additional research, and Bob said as fast as they went up, they'll come back down. So we're gonna call that 4 to 5%. Did some homework, brick, block, mortar, and roofing, Product costs, they're increasing. They're averaging about the same at about 4 to 5% a year. There's no COVID factor in there. There was no rollback in the production of those materials. Labor costs are increasing approximately 2 to 3% each year. There's no COVID factor there. It's 2 to 3% a year. And the one thing I also want folks to understand is this is a government project, so it will be a prevailing wage contract. There's no way around that. Whether it's a union company that wins the bid for the fire station or a non-union company that wins the bid for the fire station, the labor costs are the same. The state of Ohio requires us to use the prevailing wage scale. Those are published by the state of Ohio, and that's what we follow. So there is no deviation from that when you factor in labor costs. Next slide, please. A little bit about Concord Township's tax rates. There's been a lot of discussion. I've seen comments online. We've gotten phone calls. People have said, 17% of the dollar goes to Concord Township, the rest goes someplace else. What is the actual tax rate? I see it on my tax bill, but what does that mean? Concord Township is at 11.7 mils. That's what our residents pay to Concord Township, 11.7 mils. For comparison, Leroy Township's at 12.8, Perry Township at 13.9, Painesville Township's at 23.12, Madison Township is at 25.43. That's apples to apples comparison, township to township in Lake County. Out of all the taxing districts within Lake County, there are 37 tax districts. Between the cities, the villages, and the townships, there are 37 taxing districts. The highest is Wickliffe at 92.09 mils. The lowest, it's a tie between Perry Village, North Perry Village at 51.76. That is a direct result of the Perry nuclear power plant being in their backyard. No question, no doubt about it. Concord Township, we're broken into 3 categories. We have 3 taxing districts because we are serviced by 3 school districts. So Concord Township, Riverside is ranked the 9th lowest at 64.98 total millage. Of that 64.98, 11.7 is what comes to Concord Township directly. Concord Township Menor Schools, that's the M, is ranked 10th lowest. They're at 65.64, so not quite a 1 mil difference between the 2 parts of the community. Concord Township in the very southern portion, that's Chardon Schools, that's where the C comes in. They're ranked 14th lowest at 69.14. I also looked at some neighboring counties. Geauga County's average community tax rate is 13 mils. I did not delve into Cuyahoga County. They have 1 township, they're higher than we are, but that's just a snapshot of where they are. I wanted to put this slide up to let everybody know where we stood. People have called and asked. I've seen a couple of stray comments between next door and then, things like that. So I just wanted to set it straight and where we rack and stack within Lake County. Okay, 37 taxing districts. We're 9th, 10th, and 14th lowest. So we're in the bottom third, just so everybody knows. And I think that's, I think that's awesome. That's something to be proud of, that we've done all the things that we can do at 11.7 mils versus, and I'm not knocking any other community, don't get me wrong. I'm not. All the communities are great. We love them all. We're neighbors, we're friends, but the reality is this is where we stack. That's the last slide, right? Okay. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Dondorfer. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, before we get into the question portion of tonight, I would like to go over a little bit of information before we get into questions, because I know this came up online several times that I saw this week. When we talk about budgetary estimate, and we'll look back at Ms. Dawson's plan of 12,633, the budgetary estimate for both stations is $12 million. Now, that's just an estimate. We cannot get into fixed competitive bidding and drill down costs until we have secured financing. So that number, like Mrs. Dawson stated, is just a budget estimate. There was some discussion and some postings on media about, how can they have that number without any floor plans or things of that nature? Again, it's a budgetary estimate designed to secure financing, and once financing is secured in whatever that vehicle is, then we work to secure a fixed competitive bid to drill down costs and see what it is exactly going to cost. With that in mind, since our last stakeholder meeting, I can honestly say somebody's been working on this project daily, evaluating information, looking at different options. We really worked hard to try to propose options that are suitable for our community during these difficult times. I understand we're in a situation many of us haven't been in before. With that, we don't take it lightly. That's why at the last stakeholder meeting, there were some residents that came up and I had conversation with, as well as the other trustees who indicated, what about some creative financing options? Because the option we proposed at the last meeting was $8 million. So we went back to the drawing board and said, hey, how can we drill this down? We really need these fire stations now. We understand we're going through difficult times. And with that, let's find some other options on the way we can try to get this done now. Timing is never good for anything, I understand, but I really believe we need these fire stations now. With that, we know the interest rates are low, and we know if we get a low interest rate, we have the ability based on prior payments that we're going to drill this stuff down and pay it back early, and it's going to relieve the taxpayer of any further debt. So with that, I would like to open it up for questions. I think last time we started on the floor, so why don't we start virtually this evening, if that's okay, Mr. Rose? And then we'll go back and forth and answer questions and then have some comments at the end.
Folks online, anybody want to ask a question, make a comment? Okay. Well,
I can, oh, wait a minute. This is Vanessa, hold on one sec.
okay, take your time. While Vanessa's getting her microphone set, is there anybody else that would like to ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, sorry. At the last meeting, there was a discussion about, and some slides, the bond with or a voter-approved levy and the bond without the voter-approved levy. So there were two types of bonds that were presented, and the one alternative stated that if there's an approved levy, that there would be an ability to pay the debt off early. It's strong, but without, so you can still get your bond, you can still build your stations, but you do it without a voter-approved levy, no ability to pay the debt off early. But I spoke with somebody who seemed to be an expert in this field of bonds, and without a voter-approved levy, you can still, if written correctly, pay it off early. And so I went to the site EMMA that lists all the different bonds and stuff in Ohio. And in 2012, Bainbridge Township did a they financed a fire station, but it was not backed by a taxpayer levy, but rather without a voter-approved levy and it had a repayment component. So it seems that we would be able to not be putting the bond levy and taxing Concord residents more, but rather could do it without the voter-approved levy, and you would be putting up collateral. The second thing is on the next slide in that presentation, it said that the interest rates would be higher if you didn't have a voter-approved levy. And while it is true, it's not really significant. So the increase in the interest rate might be 10/100ths of a percent or 20/100ths of a percent. But again, it would be very negligible. So why not do a bond without voter approval, without increasing our taxes, and utilizing the money that you have available as collateral, and still making sure that we get the bond and we develop the new fire stations that we do need. And the third thing with that presentation that I found very interesting was that you assumed that the JED funds were not going to grow between now and 2028. And then, of course, it's going to need to be renegotiated. But it seems that in 8 years, I would really hope that this board would pay significant attention to increasing the commercial and industrial zone along Auburn and Capitol Parkway, and be putting businesses that are paying taxes, not putting in town halls where the retail is going to fail. We're going to end up with 4-story apartment buildings, but putting in important commercial development that will help increase the amount of money that they pay in taxes to Concord. So again, that would also give you additional money to pay off the bonds in a reasonable amount of time. So I ask that you seriously consider putting up the bond without voter approval and without increasing our taxes. Is that under 3 minutes?
A little over, but we'll address what we can here.
Thank you.
Okay, Vanessa, it's Amy Dawson. I'm going to address the first part of your question. I was not here at the last meeting. I had a family matter I had to attend to. But any kind of debt, whether it's voter-backed or non-voter backed, you can always pay that off early. There may be a prepayment penalty. You may have to have a certain waiting period, but in most cases, you can always pay that off early if you have the cash. If you're using your cash to pay off a higher interest rate bond, you're going to stretch your cash flow a little bit. The other thing I'm going to address is we cannot collateralize a bond with the JED funds that we have not collected yet. We can make an assumption that we're going to collect a certain dollar amount of funds based upon what we've done in the past, but Mr. Rose was told, I believe, that they will not take that as collateral. Whereas we've used that in the past as collateral on a state infrastructure bank loan. Again, it was a smaller amount, and it was the state of Ohio that was backing that up. Okay.
Right. And so
Okay, hold on. We're going to answer your question, Vanessa, on the JED here.
I didn't say that you needed to collateralize it utilizing JED. I was just hoping that over the years the JED would grow because we would be attracting commercial industrial. But so there are other types of assets that are in revenue streams that Concord receives that could be collateralized to utilize the bond without the voter approval. And the interest rate, as I said, would be negligibly different. So it wouldn't be a significant difference in price because interest rates right now are so historically low. So it seems to be a lot of reasons that it would be good. The other reason that it would be good is that if we needed to stay within our means and pay off the debt within our means, we might be able to find a more reasonably priced stations for number 1 and number 2, so that we wouldn't be designing more expensive and costly stations, but rather finding ways to keep them very inexpensive, still very safe and very comfortable for our firefighters and EMS professionals, but ones that we can afford.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Did you want to?
No, I'm done.
Okay, Vanessa, this is Morgan. I just wanted to, I'll address some aspects of, with regard to the JED, and I might defer to Ms. Dawson on this one. With respect to how we would think forward about that, generally, we certainly hope the JED will grow, and as a member of the JED board, I can tell you that's an active process, and I believe this board is all in on developing economic development in the JED. We all know how important that is. However, when you do budgets and forecasts, you have to make assumptions, and I think that would be it'd be a very hard one to project and to plan into. I think to go back to when you talk about the tax rates, as it was mentioned by Mr. Rose, and you note that Concord's tax rates are lower, you can absolutely attribute the fact that we haven't had to have a lot of tax increases in Concord due to the revenue coming into the JED, which dates back to 2008. So that's something that the prior board had the forethought to put in, and the whole purpose of putting the JED in place was to allow Concord, because we're a township and we're not collecting any of the income tax, that gave us a place to do that, so that lowers the pressure on the residents about how we have to go back to that. And when you think about being fiscally responsible, one of the things I've discussed with Mr. Rose was that if we go to general bonds, doing so without voter backing is going to strain our cash flow. So that means when we have some of the emergencies that we've had over the years and some of the capital expenses and the things we end up having to pay cash for, we don't have that. So if something big comes along, all of a sudden we're going to find ourselves in an emergency spot with no money or very little breathing room on that. I don't know if I have specifics if either want to address that. With respect to looking forward to the JED, there was a lot of momentum, and I think the result of things as they were in 2017 kind of brought a lot of that development to a halt. So we have had a lot of folks that were interested in projects there move on. As far as attracting businesses to go there, that's certainly a priority, and that's something that we want to do. And whatever it is that's going to bring development to the JED is what we're focused on. Whatever's going to bring the businesses, whatever's going to bring the payroll, whatever's going to bring that development is certainly what we're focused on.
Hi, Vanessa, it's Amy. I just wanted to address the cost of the stations. You know, when we first had this plan a year ago, the cost was more. We had more square footage. We've since then taken a lot of comments from people in the audience, in the community, about how to decrease some of that square footage, which we have. We've changed plans. We've decreased the cost. I don't see that decreasing anymore is going to give us what we need. I feel that we are at a good spot with the cost right now of the estimated cost based on the square footage and the plans that we have for both stations.
And just to follow up real quick before we go to our next question, as far as this space that we're talking about, there's been statements made that it's extravagant or it's too big. We have drilled this down to what is just needed. There's no wanted space here. These stations need to carry us through the next 50 years, and a majority of the square footage on these designs involve apparatus that we already have that we need to maintain indoors. And the square footage is within national averages as far as the costs. And you know as well as I do that we have been invested with LeMay prior to this board, and we have a financial commitment with them that we need to sustain and get this project through. So with that, is there anybody else online that would like to ask a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead, ma'am.
It's Linda Kangas, Cascade Road. Actually, it's about the fire station tax levy that we want to put in context with the other levies that we support. I have 3 questions regarding the current 5-year fire levy. from 2017, and it's 2.7 mils, and it expires in 2022. Do you plan to put this levy on the ballot next year in 2021?
I think I can answer that. It expires in 2022. You're allowed by law to renew it up to a year early, which would be 2021. That decision has not been, we haven't even discussed that yet. We haven't gotten that far, to be honest with you.
Well, and there's two other things that relate to it. What do you think? Will it be just a renewal, or might you plan to increase the millage so that the citizens would pay more taxes? Speaking of that particular levy.
I don't know the answer. We haven't even discussed that levy yet. We know it's on the horizon for a renewal. It expires in 2022, but we haven't gotten there.
We haven't discussed it, other than the fact that it's a renewal.
And so then the other thing that you haven't gotten to on that would be the possibility of another 5-year levy, or possibly a continuous renewal. So what that does is put us to wonder what situation we'll be in regarding a levy for the renewal of this fire station levy. And because it's too early, we don't have anything to think about the levy that we might be asked to pass this fall in relation to other levies that we are involved in or will be renewed. So I understand, but I just wanted to bring it up so that we could be thinking about it ourselves.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else online? Okay, we'll move to our studio audience. Come on, I'm trying to get a little humor here, folks. Help me out. I'm not Monty Hall, but I'm trying. Oh, I'm coming, man. People don't know who Monty Hall is, I don't think. There you go, man.
I'm Celia Valvis. I live in Concord Township, and I'd like Mrs. Dawson to just kind of, because I don't know what the JED is, could you explain that in simple terms? Sure. And then I have a second part question after that.
I'll stay here.
Okay, so the JED is a Joint Economic Development District that was put in place by the former Board of Trustees in 2008, and I believe there was a 20-year contract. And what that does is the township joins with a city. In our case, we have joined with Painesville, and any of the members of the JED, which are mainly businesses, but the hospitals are also in it as well, our community center's in it, Painesville Water Tower, Vista Springs. I've not been actively involved in the last couple of years, but any of the businesses who join it, they get a discount in water, so it's beneficial to them to get a discount in water. And what happens is that their payroll tax comes to us. Okay, so normally under Ohio law, we're not allowed to take their payroll tax, but because we've joined with the city, we can. Of Painesville. Okay, so I know that. So the first 8% goes to the actual JED board, and it's their own separate board, okay? And they're responsible for the economic development in that area. So the primary businesses at this point in that area are, we're talking about Auburn Cryle, okay? Pretty much all the way down Auburn Road, okay? After the 8%, first of all, 3% is taken out for expenses, which is the processing of the payroll, okay? Collecting the payroll, doing all that. The city of Painesville does that, okay? We provide administrative costs to the JED. That's what we do for it. And after the 8% is taken out, whatever's left, we get 75% of that, and the city of Painesville gets 25% of that.
Use that for what?
We have used that for road projects, and we're saving that for the fire department. That's all we've used at this point in time. So that Auburn Cryle Road that we had in, one of the reasons why we didn't have to take $10 million is because we were using some of that money to pay that back. And that's what I used to pay it back early. So it's a nice fund for large projects.
Whose idea was this to install this in 08?
Well, that would have been Chris Galloway, Connie Luda, and Paul Malczewski. Okay?
Now, understanding that this levy that we're talking about.
Sorry, I just want folks to hear.
Okay, under the levy that you were explaining is going to be $45 a year based on the,
$300,000 house.
correct, but based on the 8 million or the 12 million?
No.
The amount of the levy is what?
Right now, the trustees are considering two different options. One is an $8 million levy, and one is a $6 million levy. Okay?
So 45 was based on the 6 because.
Oh, that was that $6 million, I believe.
That's what I read.
Yeah.
Now then we have Painesville Schools, who we know are gonna come out with asking for more money. I already know that's in the works.
You mean Riverside?
Riverside, excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you. So here we are, senior citizens, paying for levies for, fire station, which I wholeheartedly agree we need a new one, but then we're gonna pay for schools again. So it gets a little ridiculous after a while, because I think you say we're the lowest tax.
We are.
Yeah, well, when you have a fixed income, it's not necessarily so. So anyways, my point is, and all of our streets are still falling apart. Hermitage, I've already dealt with. I know, I've dealt with them. They're gonna run the crap over it this week and do the stones and whatever. But our concrete is like, on all of our streets, is just all falling apart. So, I don't see where my tax dollar's going. That's what I'm saying. It's pretty sad.
Thank you very much for your comments. I think the point of this is to talk about how we could finance this so that it could work, so that we could pay it off early. And we're giving the voters the option to say yes or no. We're not making that decision for you. We're just bringing up options. And I think we've worked really hard to sit down and take the feedback that you've given us all the way from last year to this year, as far as that board and this board have come together and talked about, can we make cost cuts? Can we do this? Does it have to be 8 million? Can it be 6 million? So we've taken all that information and we've come up with a couple of different plans. And
Can it be 6 million, or you don't know yet?
they have not decided yet. That's part of what this is all about. It could be 8 million, it could be 6 million. Right, could be 0. They could choose not to go to the ballot. So that's why we're here collecting information tonight and presenting it to you so that you know if they go out for 8 million or they go out for 6 million, what it would cost you. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
If I could just piggyback on that for half a sec, because you mentioned the Riverside schools, and whether you live Riverside School District, the Menor School District side, or the Chardon School District side, well, they serve our community. We're mutually exclusive. They really don't take us, they don't take the townships. There's County Millage, there's Adams, there's Metro Parks, there's Lakeland, there's Auburn Career Center, there's the joint financing district that was just on this last ballot. Each entity has to make a decision on what they feel is best for them, and then it's up to the voters to make the decision on what they think is best for their community or for their school district or for a county agency, whether it be for children's services or something like that. We're cognizant of what the schools and the other entities within the county charge our residents, and just that's all. Yes, sir.
Okay, real quick, as far as Riverside Schools, I know you're mentioning about that and taxing and levy. If we went with if we decided on the 6 million, just, if that was our decision. If you're in the Riverside School District, and I mentioned this at the last stakeholder meeting, the Morley Library levy comes off in the fall. So it wouldn't be costing anybody. The 60% that's in Concord, it was with the Morley Library levy, that would come off, and it would be, what is it, $5.75 per $100,000 of credit.
15.
So it's 15?
15, so a $300,000 house is $47.25 a year, or less than $4 a month.
Yeah, but I'm talking about as far as if the 60% that live in the library district, it wouldn't cost them. It wouldn't be costing them because the Morley Library levy is coming off.
We're already paying for it with the Morley Library.
Right, so you would
It's
actually,
a significant difference.
you would
So
see,
that's my question.
yes, you would see a difference. You wouldn't see an increase. On the 40% who live in the Mentor School side, which myself included, we would see on a $300,000 home a $45 increase if that's the way we went. The other 60%, you'd see a gain. It wouldn't cost you anymore monthly. That's correct. The Morley Library comes out at the beginning of the year. If we were to pass the 6 mil at the beginning of the year, it comes off, that goes on. You have a credit of, what is it, $5.75?
$5.25 per hundred.
$5.25 per 100,000. Okay.
I wanted to address just a couple more points regarding the JED. First, we keep talking about that 20-year renewal. That's a renewal point. It's a 100-year agreement. So it's, if nobody says anything, if Painesville doesn't come back and express a desire to renegotiate, things stay as they are. And there's a lot of dynamics about negotiating that. So I just want to be clear. I said it last time. I want to say it again. The JED's not going anywhere. The other thing is, and I want to address, Ms. Dawson brought up the fact that the JED collects and has a budget of its own. So that one of the things we do with that budget is economic development. One of the, I forget what it is, what's Victor's phase of the one that's going, High Grove Village? So phase 11 of Quail, of 13, so we should have 2 more developments coming. Put some of those, his properties into the JED. And the JED gave him a reimbursement. We did some economic development, so the JED paid out some incentive to him, but that 2 corner properties there going into the High Grove Villa that are next to the Drug Mart building are now in the JED. So anything that goes in there that has a payroll will be collecting. So the JED isn't static. The way it is today is the way it is today, but we're also in a process of recruiting businesses to join JED. So there's been conversations with the companies that have asked for certain things. It's like, well, would you be interested in joining the JED? We could do some things for you. So it is a dynamic process. It's not static. It is an economic development tool that we use to attract businesses to Concord. And again, the forethought there being is it provides another layer of revenue to the township without having to rely on our residential tax base. So that was the forward thinking of the previous board.
And I just want to be clear, that was the JED board that provided those economic incentives, not Concord Township. Okay?
So it's done in joint. The JED has its own funds that it collects for the taxes, and it pays those funds out. So it doesn't necessarily come out of Concord's, but the JED board, Painesville, and the township all work together.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm sorry.
Thanks. I just wanted to compare the levy that we asked for last year was a 0.83 on a 10 mil, and the amount of tax that would have cost the taxpayer would be $29 per 100,000.
29 and 5 cents.
So an 8 mil would be a 0.6, which would cost about 22,
21 on the nose.
21, compared to a 6 million, which would be 0.45 at $15.
75.
So just kind of wanted to show sort of the progression there. Thanks.
Evening, sir.
Hi, Gene Lucci on Monarch Court. Just so that we're comparing apples to apples, there are 2 values to a home. The fair market value, which is the 100% value that you would sell it for, and the taxable value, which is 35% of the fair market value. The $15 per 100,000 or whatever the figure is, does that get applied to the 35% value, the taxable value, or to the fair market value, the 100% value? Because it's a big difference.
That would be the tax value is what you're paying that on. And just to clarify, if you go on the auditor's website and you see the verbiage on the auditor's website will say appraised and assessed. Assessed is the taxable value. If you pull up your current tax bill, I did notice this year when you pull the tax bill up, that the treasurer has changed the tax bill so it doesn't say assessed anymore, it says taxable. So just understand that when we're talking about appraised, that's what the county's appraising it at, and assessed or taxable are the same thing. And that is, as Mr. Lucci pointed out, 35% of your appraised value.
Hi, Christina Peterson, Bridlewood Drive. I'm actually reading a letter. So it's to Concord Township Board of Trustees and Mr. Andy Rose, Administrator, from Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive, Concord Township. It is my understanding that the trustees are still moving forward with a proposed fire levy to be placed on the November 2020 ballot. While we appreciate the trustees and Mr. Rose's efforts to include the community in the planning process and their diligent efforts to reduce the cost of the project, I cannot support the levy at this time. We are living in very uncertain times in our nation and in Lake County. The COVID-19 pandemic's negative impact on our economy will continue to be with us for the foreseeable future. To make any long-term financial decisions and to burden the taxpayers with additional property taxes does not seem prudent at this time. I ask that you put the project for Fire Station Number 1 on hold for 1 year. I fully support the building of the new Fire Station Number 2 on Prouty Road with existing tax revenues. Thank you, Brian Massey.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Louise Burkhart, Auburn Road. I'm having a senior moment and I don't remember what the current fire levy is covering and the one that's going to be expiring. So could you just refresh my memory on what that pays for?
Okay, the 2.7 mil fire levy, it's an operating levy. It's been in existence and renewed or replaced since 1991, and that pays for salaries, it pays for repair and maintenance, it pays for all the operating expenses of the fire department, including equipment. Okay?
Hi, Faith. How are you? Good.
Faith Andrews, 10441 Prouty Road. First, I want to say that, like everybody, I think, in this room, I do support our firefighters and our first responders. These are the people that are going into places where most people are running out of or fear to tread. They deserve our respect and love. And I think we all agree that we need to upgrade our fire stations for our firefighters and first responders. And I do believe that we all truly want to make that happen. However, I'm a bit concerned that perhaps there's some cognitive dissonance going on, because the reality of what surrounds us, and I refer to Mr. Massey's letter, very, very uncertain times. The entire country is in chaos for a number of reasons, all of which are negatively impacting economies at all levels. Do we even know the economic impact of this COVID crisis on the citizens of Concord or Lake County as a general rule? I mean, I know there's one company, and I think Willoughby, that is now asking for voluntary layoffs. I heard that today. The fact that you would even consider putting a tax levy on the ballot in these uncertain times is just, it makes my head spin. I've attended every stakeholder meeting. I've done my own research, and I understand the reasons why. But for those very same reasons, I'm asking you, on the other side, as the taxpayer that's going to be foot the bill for all of it, maybe we need to wait a little. Maybe we need to put the brakes on. I mean, I don't understand why the private sector and the taxpayer has to tighten our belts, live within our means, save for that room remodel or whatever. But the public sector has to have it all now. Why 2 fire stations at the same time? I feel like I'm sometimes, throughout this whole thing, I go back to the time when I had little kids and we're in the store, the toy store, in the aisle, and my son is asking me to buy both the Death Star and the Thanos Lego set, where he's going to hold his breath until he faints. Johnny, Mommy doesn't have the money right now. I don't think it's fiscally responsible or prudent to buy both fire stations now when our economic future is so uncertain. I think we should, and I fully support, building the smaller fire station using the cash on hand. And once we fully recover from fighting this invisible enemy, we can revisit the main fire station matter again. I believe this is a good compromise. Thank you.
Okay, I have some responses to Ms. Andrews' statement there. And I listened to Ms. Peterson? Mr. Massey's letter. I agree. The COVID situation and the health issue that we have here is probably going to be with us for the foreseeable future. With that, I feel we still have an obligation as a community. It's never easy. But we have an obligation, like you said, to support these firefighters. They're going into these environments. They need to have a safe environment to come back to. We need to protect their safety and their health and their wellness. I don't know. It's never a good time. I don't think we're being fiscally irresponsible. We have spent a lot of time on this. Good idea? Yes, start with Station 2. I agree. But we also we can't just keep kicking the can down the road on Station 1. Like you said, this is what Mr. Massey indicated for the foreseeable future. We don't know what the economy is going to be 10, 12, 15 years from now, but we know both fire stations need to be repaired. So what do? Do we just keep that station the way it is and not do anything? Like I said, kick the can down the road? I don't think that's responsible. I think we all live in this community. We have an obligation sometimes to help our neighbor. We have an obligation sometimes to volunteer in our community to do what's best for it. Sometimes there is times we need to sacrifice and contribute monetarily to the betterment of our community. And I believe safety services is an imperative aspect to the foundation of our community. So I respect what you're saying. I don't believe we're being fiscally irresponsible. I just think we know right now a few facts is that, yeah, we can start with Station 2 and we can pay for it, but at the same time, to be fiscally responsible, we can't cash strap ourselves for any emergency that comes in, or a cumbersome road repair or something else. And if we could secure financing at a low rate now, and listen, like I just said, 60% of Concord, it's not costing them anything. They're actually gaining $5.75. Okay, it's the other 40%. So to me, what is affordable for our firefighters? What is affordable for them? Yeah, I think we have demonstrated compromise. I came in a year ago when the ask was 10, and then it went to 8 and 6, and we have continually worked to drill down and compromise. We've been honest, we've been transparent, and we've tried to work with members of the community and taking their input as far as drilling down the designs, the square footage to what is needed, not wants. Again, forecasting that these stations have to get us into the future another 50 years, trying to reduce costs, trying to not be a burden on the taxpayer by coming up with creating financing ideas such as the 12-6-3-3. I think we've really compromised. But I don't think we should compromise to the point where we're risking our firefighters and safety service. What's it? You want to?
Okay, I, with respect to being, fiscally responsible and so forth, as far as both at once, I don't think there isn't a timeline or a plan in place as far as construction. The plan that was presented, or they were talking about doing, was building one and then using the old one. There was a process there where there was going to be consecutive, and if we're at a point where we really can't make any of the decisions, so nobody's saying at the same time. It's all about securing financing, how the funds will be released, in what order, and everything, yada yada. That's to be determined. Okay, so it's not. The other side of it is with respect to public, private, and everything. I'm in business. I've acquired another business. I've looked at building a building and doing different things, and nobody. And I don't think very few people come forward and pay cash for a home. So when you look at capital projects like this, it's pretty normal to finance them and to pay over time. So I don't know that when I started to look at the township finances and what it would take for us to save up money big enough to not actually have to have any kind of financing for a project like this, it would take a long time. With respect to COVID, that's one of the reasons there's a little bit of urgency to this, because as we've heard the fire department talk about, there's no place to decontaminate right now. I mean, that is a significant addition to both facilities. So they've had to decontaminate. My favorite story by Deputy Chief Terriaco was the bed bug story, and fortunately that happened in the summertime, and they were able to do it out on the apron outdoors. And they had a whole rig and 3 firefighters and all mixed gender contaminated, and that was a big issue. We don't have spaces for these things now, so not having it leaves our firefighters at risk, and waiting certainly creates that. With respect to COVID and the economy, in 2008 we had the same recession, and in the first 6 to 9 months I remember reading the news and having some of the same stories, and I'm on weekly calls with peer business owners and so forth, and we're all looking at the same things. Though we don't know the future, I think we're all taking a view of the economy, and I think this sense that we're going to be in some crisis like we've never seen before isn't, the economy ripples. This is what it does. It happens from time to time, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to endure. I'm not an economist, but I look at things and I see it. Yes, it's challenging, but with that also comes, opportunity. We have low interest rates. We have some opportunities potentially with construction costs. So the conversation tonight and the things we're looking at now are about the financing of the project. Why not taking advantage of getting competitive financing and trying to secure low build costs at a time when things are low, as opposed to waiting and have this project cost more money. I mean, we've been talking about this project for well over a year now, and the number one concern about it has been the cost. What we've done is look at the design. A new board has vetted the design and the pieces of it, and we're looking at the cost continually coming down, and we're looking at it from a financial perspective right now, seizing an opportunity to save money.
And also, I agree, it seems like a very ambitious project, but we need 2 fire stations. Has anyone been in the fire stations lately? When you go in there, you have a different perspective. So, maybe go visit and see what you think. Yeah. Right.
But regardless of conditions, regardless of everything that we're saying that we want to do, we have the situation that's very uncertain. Show of hands, how many in the administration have missed payment?
We're not disagreeing that it's very difficult times, that people are struggling financially. We're not disagreeing with that. I think we have to try to find a balance. So, we have different stakeholders here. We have different people's needs, and we're trying to find the balance. We think a $6 million, not that we're going with that, is an affordable tax. Does it help our firefighters? Yes. Does it help maybe most of our community who are paying taxes? We think it's an affordable tax. We need 2 fire stations. We're trying to be prudent. We're trying to acknowledge the difficulties that people have. But bottom line is we're saving costs if we go now. We don't know what the future holds, as we've all seen. That's why it's a good time to do it now.
May I say something?
Hold on 1 minute, we have another question in the audience, and then we'll get to you online.
What I think is in very poor taste is that we are allowing firefighters that live in our community to live in these conditions, and they live there. They live there 1/3 of the year. Have you been there? Because I have. I walked in, I have asthma, I could barely breathe. I was having an asthma attack. This is not right. We don't treat our brothers, our uncles, our fathers, and we should not be allowing them to live in these conditions. We shouldn't. It's not right. And these firefighters, they show up for us, and they're there for us all the time. They don't complain. They have gone out of their way to be innovative and to work with the things that they have. And we need to show up for them, and we need to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna work my way this way.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Keys. I live on Prouty Road. I've also lived on Woodthrush, Allegheny, and grew up on Hermitage, Terrible Road, by the way, now. 45 years old, been in Concord 38 years. I grew up here. I've seen it grow, develop. Hermitage didn't have any of those houses on it. We were first house on the right, half mile down the road from the Morley Split, next to a dog kennel. It has definitely changed, and it's going to continue to change. More about me real quick. Real estate agent for about 16, 17 years. Firefighter, paramedic in another community. And in full disclosure, firefighter, paramedic, part-time in Concord. The reason I mentioned the real estate side of it is because part of my job is to listen to all points of view, all opinions, see everything from different angles. And for 2 meetings now, I've listened and absorbed and tried to understand everyone's position. Bear with me, I'm trying to keep my thoughts together here. The other thing as an agent I realize is that there's 2 things you always vote for. One is safety forces levies, and 2 are the schools. Granted, the schools they're costly right now, I get it. But people want to live in communities that are safe and where you can get your children good educations. So those are things that you have to vote for when there's a levy. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. I don't want to pay more taxes either. I live in Concord. I'm a resident for a long time. I have a couple other properties. I pay a lot of tax too. But this is one levy that benefits our community exclusively. It's not helping Painesville or Chardon or whoever. It's for us, Concord. And when I say us, I keep hearing we do it for the firefighters. Let's do it for the firefighters. They need it. A lot of our firefighters are residents. We live here. This is our community. Both chiefs live here. We're doing it for ourselves, for us. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we're doing it for the firefighters. Don't get me wrong, because there's a lot of things wrong with the stations. We talk about them. Everyone knows they need replaced. We sugarcoat it. We be politically correct, but they are in poor condition. They are grossly inadequate for today's needs, not even talking about the future. And it irks me a little bit. Go take a look at them. Go take a look at them. They're terrible. We talk about the contamination that we bring in from fires and EMS calls. We talk about COVID. We're in a global pandemic. I've never seen that before. I don't know who has. We've never had that here. This is more important than ever to get these places built and replaced. we sit here, we're talking about a bed bug. I go on a call, just an example, and I'm trying to just explaining my point of view from this. If we go on a call with a COVID case, we put our PPE on, and we wear our uniforms and duty boots and all this stuff in the house, and we get back to the station, we got to decontaminate, and that's fine for some guys. There's not even space to keep our clothing there. Some guys have lockers, I don't. I'm a part-time guy. You know where all my stuff goes? It goes home with me. My duty boots, my pants, my shirt, my jacket, hat, whatever I have goes home with me. So I'm taking all that junk home. What good does that do? Does that help my family? I'm part of this community. I live here. I love it here. It's great. And I'm not the only one. That's just what I see. That's my example. Cancer, we've talked about contaminants, cancer, all the carcinogens that we are exposed to as firefighters. Think about this for a second. I'm going to run over a little bit. I'm sorry. What about the Palumbo Act? I mean, a lot of people have heard about that, okay? The guy gets cancer, he dies because of his job. Occupational hazard, perhaps. You talk about Beechwood Fire Station, stuff like that. Talk about the cities. What did they pay out? What did they settle? Beechwood and Wickliffe for that. God forbid one of our guys gets that. What happens then? Can we afford to pay out for that? Or would it be more financially responsible to build the new stations and try to protect the guys that we have now? And we don't get in that position. So what I'm saying is, can we afford not to build the stations? And finally, the biggest problem is having vehicles off-site. And this is the one that really gets me. As a resident in Concord, and I'm not talking as a firefighter, as a resident, I was not working, but we have 2 squads, one at each station. We have a third backup, and that's stored off-site. Most of us know that are in this room. We've heard it. And the second stakeholder meeting, Chief alluded to, it takes us 4 minutes to go get that squad and respond to a call. After the first meeting, I was up all night because this just gnawed at me. And then it's July 15th, something similar kind of happened again. The department had 6 calls in between a 1-hour period. 11:15 to 12:07, 6 calls, 3 of them were EMS. We have 2 squads. What do you do then? You know, they called mutual aid. They asked for help. I don't know if they did. I was not working that day. But it reminded me of this situation, and this is the story I want to share. This is my whole point. About 3 years ago, I was at my other department listening to the radio, and because I get pages when Concord has calls. There was a call on Pine Hill. It was for a 4-year-old choking at the time. Concord was in one of those spells, and it happens, not often, but it happens, where both squads are out, they're on multiple calls, they're busy. On the perfect situation, Station 2 responds with a squad. The chief talked about getting 2 minutes out the door. That's the average time by the time you get all geared up and get down to the trucks and get them rolling and whatever. And there's 3 minutes travel time to the address, because I know the address. That's 5 minutes to get to a kid that's choking. Scenario 2, since Station 1 is out, is that personnel from Station 1, go back to the road garage, get the squad, drive there. You got 2 minutes to get out, 4 minutes to get the squad, 6 minutes travel time from the road garage to Pine Hill. You got 12 minutes. And situation 3 is what happened. They called for mutual aid help from Painesville Township. They're 2 minutes out the door. It's 7 minutes travel time because I mapped it. Granted, we can push those times a little bit, but that's still 9 minutes. I want to know who can breathe or survive for 12 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever it is, if you can't get air. Now, I'm playing the what-if game a little bit, because fortunately the 2 parents, one wasn't home, one was home, are both in medical background. And they were able to get the kid breathing a little bit, kind of clear his airway, but before Painesville Township got there. But what if they couldn't? A 4-year-old kid choking, and we got a call for help from Painesville Township on Nye Road? What good is that for anyone here? I don't understand that. We have neighbors, it's great, they help us out from time to time, but we can't rely on them. This is our community. We need this for us. And we're here over this. 21 bucks. Is that what we're talking about? If we put on a levy? 21 bucks. I wouldn't trade a single life in here for 21 bucks. I wouldn't. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I promise I'll be right back. But was it, somebody raise their hand, but I'll be right back. I'll get there, Dick. Somebody online wanted to make a comment? I'm sorry, I'm here. Somebody online?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, Linda Kangas. We are really surrounded by the coronavirus. Every community, all across the states, and many people have no jobs, and many are sick and dying, and they're suffering financially. I just think that I would like to suggest supporting, as others have, that Station 2 go up first with the available money that we have, and then we continue planning for Station 1 for the next year. I think it's inappropriate to raise taxes at this time. As much as we want to have the stations built and up, both of them for the guys and the women. I do support Station 2, chosen as the first online, and then we would go ahead with Station 1 following that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Dick Terriaco. I live on Coleridge. I've been a resident since 1976. 1977, I joined the Concord Fire Department, and I served until 1995. Part of that time was as fire chief, okay? I'm the past. I have to live the past because that's all I know. The new days are here when we have to make adjustments. I can tell you my time as fire chief, I sat at the station, one person on duty. That was me, Station 1. Station 2 was not in existence. There was nobody there. All that was there was 2 trucks. Didn't even have a toilet. So what I want to say is that if you procrastinate, you're going to lose. My time as fire chief, I would go to the trustees and I would say to them, the community is growing leaps and bounds. I need to provide paramedic programs, service for the community. I had to argue to get it. We don't have the funds. We don't have the equipment to do what we needed to do. I said, I need to man Station 2. Well, we don't have any funds for that. Not only that, but Station 2 is nothing more than a 2-bay garage. Where am I going to put the firefighters if I did have that opportunity? So my past is, if you procrastinate, you're going to lose, okay? Concord Township has grown leaps and bounds. I think now it's slowed down a little bit. But I think the total build-out, I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be, what, 40,000 residents in a period of time? I'm not sure what, I heard that number. But I encourage you to deal with today, deal with the future. You can't procrastinate. It's not good. You can't catch up. I spent my time as fire chief trying to catch up with the community's growth. I was not very successful. I was able to get Station 2 accommodations to man the station with people. I had to take money out of my budget get the volunteer fire guys to go in. We created a little area, 15 feet by 7 feet. And I put 2 firefighters in there, okay? They had a shower, they had a toilet, and that was it. And they had bunk beds, 2 people, that was it. But the manning was still a problem, okay? The township is growing, leaps and bounds, you know? If we wait, I think we're gonna suffer for that. And my recommendation is that Concord is moving, gonna have a lot of people here before too many years. We need to keep up with the growth. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kitty Langley, and we live on Conley. My concerns over this fire stations, both of them, are we have the knowledge and we know that these stations are not to standard. We know that the people we are putting in these buildings not only are risking their lives for us, but we are endangering their lives every day we ask them to go to work and just be in that building. When it comes to building just Station 2, I ask you, who is going to decide who is the firefighter that is going to take COVID, hepatitis, cancer-causing agents home to their children? Which one of you is going to decide who that person is? Because if you have one standard and a good station and the other one isn't, how can you make that decision? You can't. You have the knowledge, you need to make both of them as safe and as practical and working to standards as you can. It's going to cost money. We're on a fixed budget. We're both retired. This is what we're looking at. Number one, there's a firefighter levy that is going to expire in '22. If they renew it, my taxes are not going to go up. They're going to be the same. First thing. Number two, I do live in the Morley area, which means my taxes are going to go down with that levy. So I am not going to pay any more to have a safe fire station, 2 stations that I can look at and be proud of and not have to wonder what the community's liability will be because somebody will have work-related cancer. It's guaranteed. And cancer's not the only thing these guys are looking at. There's many, many diseases that come out of this. And if, as a community, we would rather pay for litigation instead of doing the right thing, I think I need to move.
Okay.
Claudia Hemphill, Concord Hampton Road. I think it's important that, yes, we factor in COVID and everything that's going on, but life is not static. Life goes on. A lot of us have reached the peak and are sort of on a downslope, so we're seeing a shorter period of time that we're looking at how long we have to pay for things. But forget about that, because you don't forget about it, but you need to factor in, look at all the people on the upslope. Everybody, the communities need to move forward. Change never stops, taxes never stop, death never stops. So if you stop and wait and procrastinate, you lose. I think the only way we can take care of everybody is if everybody accepts each other's differences and works together for the betterment of the whole, we'll all win.
Thank you. Hi, Denise. Here you go.
Thank you.
Oh.
Oh, the rec. Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank everyone who's provided this opportunity. This is my 3rd stakeholder meeting, and each one has really generated a lot of great ideas, which you have acted upon, and I really appreciate that. I think, there's still some questions out there. One of the things that I needed clarification on, because I kept hearing about Morley coming off. So I called the auditor's office, and what I was able to find out is it's a 1.5 mil levy. What's coming off is 0.5. Your ask is 0.4, what? 3? 0.4. 0.45. If it's 6 million, it's 0.45. All right, so that's the levy, that's a part of the levy that's coming off, okay, that's being currently collected that ends at the end of this year. The 1 mil with Morley doesn't come off until, I think it's 22 or 23. So chances are they're probably going to try to renew that portion of it. But the fact is that there seems to be a little bit of a wash there. I'm just going to state that because it's factual. The question really comes down to what each of us has to do as far as making a decision. We know our budgets, we know what our priorities are, we hear many different opinions here, but I really feel that it's no different than parents struggling now. Do I send my child to school? Is it safer to keep them home? Maybe halftime, yes, they need to wear a mask. I mean, you just have to think through what is best, like what you can afford. And obviously, I think the key thing here is timing. And we all recognize we absolutely need new fire stations. I've been in them. And I have been really working hard to try to get this project to scale down. And I still want to remain somewhat involved in terms of trying to see, as plans get teased out, how we might be able to continue to save costs, especially with pre-engineering and the Station 2 project. But the couple of questions that I've heard in talking to people, they're not necessarily my questions, is, this money will provide funds for the fire stations, but it also frees up some funds. I know you have to pay back the loans, but one of the key questions that's been asked is, since you said paying off early, it's a 27-year levy. So if you're talking that I know I've heard 12 years, that hopefully we can pay it off in 12 years. No one has a crystal ball whether that could happen, but in talking to someone who deals with school bonds, it is possible to write language in there whether in 12 years it could be either paid off or refinanced so that it isn't a burden for taxpayers over 27 years. So again, I just say, are there ways to relieve the concerns of taxpayers? And then another question was, since there was, you were looking into an addition to Town Hall, where does that fall in all this? Is that on the back burner? Because I know Burgess and Nyepel submitted something and someone asked that question.
The Town Hall?
The Town Hall.
Yeah, that's on the back burner.
That's on the back
Right,
burner.
we're looking at a grant for that did not, I believe, did not go through, and we're not moving forward on it at this point.
Okay. And with the JED and the development of Capitol Parkway and the contract to try to solicit, some type of businesses there, that would be money they would be spending, not money Concord would be spending to develop it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to clarify those things. All right. And then let's see. Just the operational costs of the new facilities. Obviously, they're larger, but yet there might be more cost-efficient lighting. There's a lot of different things that could be considered. But when you look at the fire levy, with an ask for this to build these stations, we're assuming that this operational levy that's going to be hopefully just a renewal, not an increase, that would we need to know that, because that has to be factored in if it's only a year away. So I'm just kind of voicing what I've heard. Okay? All right, thank you.
I'm Rosetta. I live on Jason Avenue. I've been a Concord resident for 42 years, and I've raised 4 kids. And when you put this on the ballot, which, is it on the ballot now? Okay, when you go to put it on the ballot, is the verbiage, when a voter goes in on November 3rd, is the verbiage going to be specific as far as which parcel? Are you going to use where the soccer fields are, or are you going to use the town hall property?
And you can answer that.
I'll take that question. Thank you. Bond levies, if it goes on the ballot, are not specific to the parcel. It is just specific to the fire stations project. But it does not state, voters aren't choosing whether it's going on for Station 1, they're not choosing whether it's going on the town hall parking lot or the soccer field site. It's strictly for the construction of fire stations. And that's it. Sure.
Would the trustees be more specific? If it's not going to be on the ballot, are they going to be more specific before people go vote as to which property we're looking at?
We've probably already determined that it's going to be on the soccer field.
Yeah, I think to Mr. Donover just said, right now we've, for several reasons, are looking more towards the soccer field. I mean, again, I think when we talk about tonight, just to reiterate a point made earlier about financing, this is about sort of getting the financing, and then, you look at, it gives us the ability to take a look at the project and then start making those cost decisions. So we're looking at estimates right now. When you have the financing, you start getting into the project, and that's where you really start doing the hard evaluations of it. Right now, I think for a lot of logistical reasons, we're preferring it, the soccer field, but, that's the direction we're looking.
Any other questions or comments? All right, sir. Hang on, Carl.
I'll be behind you when you're done.
All right.
Mike McCullough, Pine Hill Road. I'd like to thank the firefighters, former firefighters, for expressing their need for fire stations. I share that need. I understand this meeting is about financing the fire station for the most part. There's no architect here to discuss any further plans or anything. Looks like the same pictures are in the back, right? That we saw last meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the first thing I heard was the decision has not been made on financing. But then the slides that I see had a $6 million levy, an $8 million levy, and I didn't see anything about building Station 2 with existing monies, like I did the last meeting. Did I miss a slide? Was that slide not here? Or that was before? So it looks like maybe we made a decision already. We want a levy? No.
We didn't make a decision.
We didn't make a decision.
No, there was,
Okay.
on those slides, there was, in the
All right.
plan of the 12,633,
Yeah.
it broke down the existing money and money we have on hand to build Station 2.
Okay.
And
All right.
You want to clarify that?
Yeah, we have $2.5 million in the bank right now that will go towards Station 2. There will be a time factor, by 2021, barring any emergencies for cash, we will have $3 million at the start of the project. So it's being estimated we need 4.5. We have to take out a short-term loan if they decide to do the fire station 2 first, possibly. I can't say at this point because they haven't decided which station they're doing first or if they're going out for bond levy or not. I was asked to prepare paperwork for the 2 options they're currently considering financing. I believe that they, and I was not here, but I believe they talked about paying cash for a station in previous sessions. So that is also on the table still.
Okay. My personal opinion, we should proceed with existing cash and get to work on Station 2. Stop sitting on our hands. Even if you put a bond levy out there for November, there's no guarantee that's going to pass. How do you overcome 2/3 of the people not passing the last levy? How do you overcome that, especially in these times? I don't think it's likely the levy's going to pass. I think planning and getting going on Station 2 with existing funds is the way to go.
I can answer that.
That's not a question. That's an opinion. Okay? Also, I saw some slides up there that talked about brick and mortar construction. When I was here at the last meeting, I asked about steel construction. I understand there's no architect here. We haven't taken builder bids yet. I also asked about partnering with Auburn Career Center to see if their students could erect the interior of the fire station, any plan that's approved, and maybe start tapping on some of the school tax dollars as a creative way of funding.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think each of us are going to make a few closing comments. I think we'll start off with Amy.
So thanks to everybody for coming and giving us your opinions, your comments. That's what we wanted. That's why you're here. So we appreciate that. Again, we feel that we need to support our community the best way we can. We have, like I said, different stakeholders here that we have to find a balance. So I hope we can all move forward with this, with what we need in the best way that we can. If you have questions, if you need more clarifications, we are always available. I'm sure you can make arrangements to visit the fire stations if it's distancing and masks and all that to get a different perspective. And I would just challenge you to really research. A lot of people like Denise have done a ton of research on their own. You can't just read something and say that your perception is really the reality. You got to research it on your own. So make sure your resources are reputable, that you look at all different angles. And again, reach out if you have any questions. And again, thank you very much for your time.
I want to also, excuse me, I want to thank everybody for coming and participating, for those that have been here. I first moved to Concord Township in 1984. That was the summer that the U.S. hosted the Olympics in Los Angeles. That summer I remember playing in Concord Hills Park and swimming in the Brightwood Lake. I didn't live here very long because a short time later my parents got divorced and I left Concord. But at that time, little did I know it was a journey that wasn't ending, it was one that was beginning. I returned 15 years later as an adult when I bought my first home. When I decided to campaign last year for Township trustee, I started walking door to door. I spent time in neighborhoods that I was familiar with, and I went down streets I'd never been before. I saw Concord on a level that I'd never experienced. I met a lot of great people, and I started to really appreciate the community even more than I did when I started. This spring, when I got back on my bicycle and started riding around the township, I started getting off the main roads I used to just ride through, and I started retracing my steps, checking out the neighborhoods I was in last summer. And I saw changes. I've seen renovations that are completed and landscaping projects. And of course, this summer, I've seen a lot more people in their yards. And it's been a great experience because I feel really connected to this community now, and I love it more than I ever did. I cherish the memories I had as a child. I go through and I have all these memories now that I never thought I'd be looking at, and I really cherish everything that's happening now as far as my experience in the township. And it was one of the greatest honors of my life to be elected trustee, to come here and be part of this and to make a decision like this. As you can see, we have a lot to consider as trustees, and I'm very honored to serve with both of my co-trustees. I feel like we're doing a really good job together. This project is about constructing fire stations that Concord Township desperately needs. Updating these inadequate facilities will improve the service the Concord Fire Department delivers to the community, and it'll improve the safety of our firefighters. Once we're able to take our equipment that's scattered about and store it in one place, we'll do a better job serving the community, and the firefighters will do a better job maintaining and caring for that equipment, the township property. Our firefighters are exposed to a variety of pollutants, including diesel fumes from their trucks, hazardous materials, and of course, fires. Our EMS personnel face contaminants on a daily basis, such as bed bugs and more recently the coronavirus. This winter, I had an opportunity to attend my very first Ohio Township Association conference, in which over 2 days I got to attend a lot of different seminars. I went to one called Protecting Township Firefighters. Given that this was current and hot issues in Concord, I figured it was probably time well spent. I walked into that session expecting to see a fire chief or a deputy chief and maybe some manuals and operational protocols talking about things they do to manage safety during call response maybe. But instead I was confronted with a gentleman in a suit, a lawyer, and he started talking about workers' comp. And there was a change in Ohio Revised Code recently. I believe Governor Kasich signed it, so give you a little bit of a time frame when it was. And it created the presumption that if a firefighter contracts cancer, that they do so in the course of their duty on the job. And the entire conversation was about managing workers' comp and all of the things that go along with it, what your responsibility as a trustee, what the financial obligation of the township is if something like this occurs. Now, as the owner of a manufacturing business, I'm all too familiar with workers' comp, and of course I take workplace safety very seriously. I don't have many injuries, but I always go above and beyond when we take care of our employees to make sure that everything's taken care of. Providing these spaces, the decontamination spaces that are a big part of these designs, is very important to me, and it's going to solve a huge problem that our firefighters face every day. It'll make their experience at work more safe, and it'll improve their response to you. At the same time, I appreciate that these are uncertain times that we all face. And just like everybody watching their household budgets, I'm carefully stewarding over the budget of my business, and I watch my business numbers every day just to make sure that we stay on top of things. And I know these are stressful times. During times like this, big decisions are very difficult. Building stations like this and taking on a project like that always gets more complicated when things are challenging like this. I hear loud and clear the concerns of Concord residents about their taxes. I know Concord residents have seen their taxes rise steadily for 10 years. My tax bill has nearly doubled. Concord Township does collect a small portion of it, about 17%. When our schools faced hardships, this community came through. I understand how important schools are, and I chose to support them. Our community has supported the schools at a steep cost. Over the last 7 years, the average Concord home has paid an additional $1,700 for the schools. Today, the township needs similar support for our fire department and our first responders. If a levy is placed on the ballot, an average home in Concord would see a cost of, and this would be the higher of the two options we proposed, I just want to be clear, about $55, and possibly less, could be as low as $45. It's been expressed this evening, and I've heard it in the weeks coming up, that we're going too fast and that we should slow down, and maybe that's the more prudent route to take. It's not an unreasonable suggestion. It's certainly something that is on our list of options. Even though we presented funding options, those are funding options. Decision options include that. We could do nothing. We can proceed with those funding options. All kinds of things on the table here. In challenging times like this, and I know this through my business experience, it's very easy to look conservative and look short term and not see through the fog. Okay, one of my favorite leadership documentaries is a film called The Fog of War, and I would suggest that we're in that kind of fog right now. But at times like this, it's also easy to overlook opportunities. There's a window on low interest rates. Waiting longer could cost us more in interest rates. If we don't do bonds or anything now and we do them 2 years from now, it could be more expensive. And we've started to see the construction costs maybe rising. We've talked about materials rising. We've seen costs on average rise 5% over every year the last couple years. And waiting, we may see that cost continue to rise, so 5% every year. These are big numbers. That's a big number. The other thing is, 4 days ago, I talked to a builder that lives in the township, and he asked what we were doing on this project and where's it going. And he said to me that a lot of the big commercial projects are starting to slow. And he gave me some examples and said, if you take this to bid, you might see ability to substantially save next year. There's going to be a lot of contractors potentially looking for a lot of work. And he threw out some pretty big numbers. I never want to hang my hat on that speculation, but I took that conversation to heart very seriously. I understand that if we ask, we're asking the residents to come forward at a stressful time. You know, my belief on the economy, as I said earlier, is that we go through this from time to time, and it's the economy as a whole endures, and we're very cognizant of that. We're working on collecting some information about the economy. We know tax collection hasn't fallen off yet in Concord, so we're feeling pretty good about how things are going, but we do understand that it's trying, and it definitely weighs on all of us. We've engaged the community as we've been asked to do. We've gone through the designs, we've explained what's there, we've demonstrated that there isn't waste in them. On a cost per square foot basis, this is very much in line with a number of the projects that have been presented to us, including several of the ones brought forward by ACT. We've listened to the input, we've brought changes to the table. This project is a shadow of what it was 12 months ago. And each trustee has continued to make themselves available for discussion, and I believe will continue to do so. I've heard a lot from a lot, and I want to address something because I keep hearing it. There's a lot of residents that have genuine concern about taxes, and we've had a lot of conversation get swept up for other reasons. But I'm also hearing from a lot of residents that how upset they are about how we're not being there for our firefighters and how the narrative seems to be that we're just constantly opposing anything Concord does. Again, I feel like there's a lot of that coming, and I have a lot of residents that are complaining and asking us why we're not moving forward with this faster. The trustees have reached a decision point. We need to know we have funding in place to move this project forward. The next step in this process is similar to being pre-qualified. When you go buy a home, you secure the financing, and then you go home shopping. The bank lined up behind you, they do the credit checks and all that. That's where we are. We have opportunities to continue working on the design. We have opportunities to save money, but we can't work on those things until we secure financing. If we wait, we don't have the financing secured. We can do the project piecemeal, but we put Station 2 off probably for a couple more years. And we may miss some opportunities to save money. By that time, the interest rates may come up, the construction may come back in Concord, and we may be looking at substantially more costly than we would be facing today. I see a lot of opportunity. Again, I want to be clear, the trustees haven't made a decision. We get to go forward with that, and we have a short window here to deal with that. I want to thank everybody for participating. I will continue to be available by phone, email. I'm happy to visit in person. Anybody that wants to dialogue about that, I have done so with several residents and would look forward to the opportunity to speak with anybody I already haven't spoken with. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Thanks, Morgan. I appreciate your comments. I'll be brief. I was in public safety my entire professional career for 25 years. During that time, I worked with these guys probably most of my career. Most of these firemen, we worked scenes together. And the driving force and motivation for first responders was always the reward of service to their community. Goes a long way. And it was always important to me, serving a community that I grew up in. I'm a firefighter here who lives here. I lived here my whole life. Served at Concord for 25 years. And the driving force here is the reward that you get from helping others in your community. So with that, I ask you to go home tonight and reflect on what we discussed here tonight and think about what is really affordable for these firefighters. For many of the people that I heard comments made statements about not raising taxes. I listened to where your address is. For those people that made some statements about not wanting their taxes raises, if we were to happen to put a ballot involving the $6 million, it would be a wash for you. So I'm asking you, what is affordable for these firefighters in these fire stations, because it wouldn't be raising your taxes. So I ask you to think about that tonight and reflect on that as we work together to make a decision on how we can move these projects forward. We need fire stations for these firefighters. They deserve it. They deserve our community support, and they need to have safe environments that they can work on in these difficult times. We see it nationally right now. First responders are leaving in groves. Law enforcement first, firefighters get online. There is a huge issue with first responders. We need to take care of these people. They're on the front lines. They deserve our support. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. There's still some water in the back if you want some water. Hannah, go ahead.